All right, let me first just start out with the I'm sorry. And then I guess I'll try to explain, give you some background and try to explain what's going on here. So, as you know, we have a solar panel setup. As a matter of fact, just 2 days ago, I made a video and I showed you all the components that it takes to make a solar panel setup. And I'll put an up next box at the end of this video to that video. It takes 4 components to make a solar panel system. You have the solar panel, the charge controller, a battery or more, and a inverter. And each one of those things contribute to changing DC power or charging your batteries and then converting or inverting that into from DC power to AC power. Now, we've lived this way for 4 years, and then prior to that, I lived in a pop-up camper. Carolyn and I lived in a pop-up camper and a truck camper that we are tearing apart. That's just a disaster right now because it's so muddy. I tell you, we live on a side of a mountain. The whole thing, just a huge hill. And it has rained so much that we're like a lake here. You would think that water would have ran off, but it just accumulated. It's really terrible here. So as soon as it dries out, I'm gonna work on that, tearing that truck camper down. We had a system similar to what we have now in the truck camper and in the pop-up camper. The only difference is instead of having a charge controller and solar panels, we had a generator and a battery charger. Same setup. So in that case, we had a generator which provided the electric, same as the solar panels, a battery charger that did something with that energy, same as the charge controller, and then you have a battery and a inverter. So I ran the generator, the gasoline generator, about 2 times a day, about 8 hours a day. I will admit it was pretty inconvenient, and everybody thought we should have solar panels. But when we were out in the forest, there was very little sun. Of course, everybody said, well, any sun would be better than nothing. Well, we also had to consider weight. We were in a pickup truck, a 4-cylinder pickup truck, and so we had to consider how much weight we were hauling. And solar panels are not light. I think they're about 15 pounds a piece, and that really adds up with however many solar panels you can get. I mean, we could have gotten 6 on top of our pop-up camper or on top of the truck camper. So, you know, that's a considerable amount of weight when you have to think about, do I want a battery or do I want water? Now, a lot of people said we should have gotten a lithium-ion battery because it's lighter, and true, but there's also cost involved with all that. And that was a few years ago, so I didn't even understand them that well. We'd already had our system in place. Now, when we bought the pop-up camper, it was in terrible shape. It was a 71 Starlight, I forget what it was. You can actually go to my channel and go to the very first videos, and you'll see pop-up camper and us building it up. So I essentially built the electric system in that thing. And so when I hooked up, I could plug the truck into the camper. Of course, you get your lights, so there was actually 2 plugs. You had one plug that would do all the lights, and then I had another plug that would charge the batteries. So it would take energy from the alternator. It actually took it from the battery. Now, you're not supposed to do that, but I did because I wanted that extra battery. Oomph. Regardless, it doesn't really matter. That alternator would charge the battery in the camper as we were driving around. Now, I did something a little different also. We never used it, but the idea was pretty solid. If we decided that we were going to go to the grocery store and we were going to leave the camper behind, there's Skitty. She's checking up on me. She does that all the time. Wants to know what I'm doing down here. I doubt if you got to see her. I'm not going to move the camera because it took a while to get this set up. So what would happen is I could take a battery. I had 2 batteries in the pop-up camper. I could take a battery out of the camper, still run the appliances. We had a refrigerator in the pop-up camper off that one battery, and then put the other battery inside the pickup truck bed, hook the battery up to the plug-in that I could charge the battery in the pop-up camper, and as we're driving around, charge that battery up, and then when we got back, I could just take that battery, put it into the camper, and then I only have to charge one battery instead of two batteries. It made sense, but it got kind of complicated because it was hard to get the batteries in and out, and we never used it. But when the camper burned down, the pop-up camper, we built the truck camper, and then I just incorporated everything into the truck. It was just one system. So as I was charging the battery, the house battery, with the generator and the battery charger, I was also charging the truck battery. But if I was driving, the truck battery and the house battery were being charged by the truck. So it was kind of a universal system. No matter what I was doing, it was charging. And I really liked the system. Now, years ago, I had solar panels on top of my house. It was an old system back when technology was still growing, and they didn't even have the MPPT charge controllers back then. It was just, I forget what they're called, the standardized charge controller. And I learned a lot playing around with it. I didn't have a lot of panels, but my ex-wife expected it to produce a lot of electricity. So it was always a struggle. We had lights strung up all over the house that would run off the batteries, but the batteries would die, and then all of a sudden we wouldn't have lights. So I was always trying to manipulate things. I had this little generator, and that's when I learned I could charge the batteries off that little generator. I mean, it was like a 1,000-watt generator. It was pretty loud. I could also sort of run my lawnmower a little bit and get some electricity off of that. I just take jumper cables and hooked it up to the system. But the problem is the lawnmower just doesn't produce a lot of amps. It's like 6 amps. It's not a lot. It takes forever for it to charge. But then, of course, I could hook the car up to it. And I did that a few times. Hook the car up to it and charge the batteries. Or I could, and she would get so mad at me. I would just take the battery charger, I plug it into the wall, and I charge the battery. She said, well, what's the point in having the system if we're just using electricity from the wall? And she had a valid point. But back then, I knew my system wouldn't survive SHTF. But I always had planned on it. And you can tell over time that I've gotten smarter and better at it. And now that we live completely off solar panels, a generator, and a battery charger. That's it. I'm pretty proud of our system. So much so that I have tried to convince people not to buy a solar generator. Now, I'm going to explain the solar generator here in just a bit. So I've tried to do everything I can to convince you that I essentially have a solar generator, and it's about the same price as the one you could buy at the store. So if you go and look, solar generators is essentially everything I have except the solar panels. Now, you can buy solar panels for them. They are a solar generator after all. Some of them come with solar panels, others do not. You got to buy them extra. So I told you there's 4 components to my system: a solar panel, a charge controller, a battery, and an inverter. So you can buy this suitcase looking thing, and it has exactly that minus the solar panel. So it has a charge controller, it has a battery, and it has an inverter. Now, you can charge this thing many different ways, kind of like I did at the old house with the 2 solar panels, or 3 or 4 solar panels, however many I had. You could plug it into the wall, you could plug it into your car, you could plug it into the generator, or you could plug it into solar panels. It does have some use to it. But I've always said, if you're going to develop a system, it's probably cheaper and smarter to develop this system. Of course, people in apartments are going to say, well, what if an electric goes out? I need them. Okay, well, there's 2 different subjects going on here. One, I'm talking about off-grid living. If you're living off-grid, I don't recommend them. There's cheaper methods to get started. If you live in an apartment and you're waiting for SHTF, and I know I'm not even talking about SHTF, your power goes out for a couple hours. Yeah, they're probably pretty handy. So if you're a prepper, then by all means, you should go get one. But as an off-gridder, I'm not too excited about it. So I have made other suggestions for even preppers that probably would be cheaper. You actually have a generator in your yard right now, whether you have a generator or not. I mean, actual generator. Everybody, I would imagine, in my audience has a generator, and they don't even realize it. You have a car that has an alternator that produces electric. It's exactly the same concept as an inverter generator. Same exact concept. As As a matter of fact, an inverter generator uses alternator technology. Not exactly sure how it works anymore. I used to, but I have forgotten, and I wasn't going to look it up again. So what I've always suggested is you get yourself an inverter. You can buy these at Walmart or on Amazon, and you probably get a 1,000-watt one for $100. And so what you do is you put the positive on your battery on your car, put the negative on your battery on your car, start your car. You got to start your car because your battery just can't hold much energy for very long on your car. And then you'll see that on the other side, I think you can see it has outlets. So you plug an extension cord into this. So this is underneath the hood of your car. Now, if there's a storm, you're going to want to make sure that it doesn't get wet. These short out easily. And I know that because in the pop-up camper, we had a leak. Driving down the road one time, we had a leak in the camper. Water got on it barely and burned it out. And the second time I messed it up, I accidentally spilled coffee on it. Instantly made it go bad. On the other hand, it's not like you can cover it up because it has fans on it. But you can position it underneath your hood so it doesn't get wet. Lower your hood. Now, I know all the safety experts out there, you need to tell people not to get carbon monoxide poisoning. Yes, your car needs to be outside. Don't put your car inside and start it. I thought my audience was smarter than that, but apparently the people who are safety minded don't think so. So now you have a generator, so if there's an emergency, even in an apartment, some apartments, now like high-rise apartments you couldn't do this in, but some apartments you could use this idea. Grab an extension cord, a 100-foot extension cord, start your car up, make sure it's locked so nobody steals it, run your extension cord to your freezer, and now you can run your freezer. Run your freezer for an hour or two and then shut the car off. Let the freezer sit there. It doesn't have to run the entire time, otherwise you'd use all your gas. Try to spread this out until the electric comes back on. So now you have a generator. And it's pretty cheap. For $100, that's what you got. Now, of course, you got the gasoline, and it probably would use a little bit more gasoline than what you use in your generator, but it's still a reasonable idea and fairly cheap. But I cannot convince people that I'm not a big fan of solar generators. You got to have a solar generator. Well, I've come to an idea that I've changed my mind. I don't know, probably 20 years ago, I bought my dad, I didn't know they were generators back then. They weren't called generators. It was just a power pack, and it was heavy. I'm sure it had some sort of lead acid or gel battery in it. It was heavy. But I bought it from Walmart. The same things as a solar generator. It had an inverter, it had a battery, it had a way to charge it through the wall or through the cigarette lighter in your car. I think it could even jump your car. But I mean, that's beside the point. It had a light on it. He never really saw the potential in it. The problem was it was heavy. I mean, he left it in the back of his car, and I bet he probably got 5 gallons less per mile than, or per whatever, than what he had before. But he did keep it in his car. And I think he primarily used it to jump his car if the battery was ever to go dead. But it had a lot of potential. And back then, I thought it was a good idea. But like I said, as an off-gridder, I'm just not a big fan of them. Well, I haven't changed my mind. But I have finally found a practical way to use it, even for somebody in an apartment, because I didn't understand how somebody in an apartment could use it. So power goes out, you plug your freezer into it, and in 24 hours, the solar generator no longer has any electricity in it to power your freezer. So why did you have it? Now, it is a lot more expensive than my idea, but if you did decide to get a solar generator and you did need to charge it up, I saw a video today where it was plugged into the cigarette lighter, and I don't know why I never thought about that. So when he ran out of electric, he did the same thing I did in the pop-up camper. Could take that battery out, or the solar generator, whatever you want to call it. He put it in the back of his vehicle, plugged it into the cigarette lighter, went driving around, came back, had electricity. Now, again, I'm not sure that is the most cost-effective way of doing things. Like I said, when you could have $100, you could buy this, and you would have electricity for as long as the car had gas in it. The other thing I could suggest here is if you decided to even go one step further, you could charge a battery, a RV battery, like I have 8 of them, from your vehicle. All you'd have to do, get some jumper cables, turn on your car, and your car would then charge the RV battery. Then you could take the RV battery inside your house, plug the inverter into your battery, and now you have electricity until the battery goes dead. It's the same exact principle, as the solar generator. But I did want to stand corrected because in the past I saw no reason to get it. So since you can charge in your vehicle, it kind of makes a little bit more sense to me. So if you'll click this up next box, it'll take you to that video where I was showing you my components to my solar panel system. So if I can inspire you to think outside the box so you can live your dreams. Thanks for watching.